Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni.
Good morning, Ruben.
Good morning.
Good morning, Victoria Tundu MKO Abiola.
Morning, Mr.
Yes,
Efeni.
hope no hangover from yesterday's celebration.
I'm just about okay.
Good. Hangover from happiness. Anyway.
Yeah.
Now let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of record. Well, we just start from the window story up, down, where you have a lot of stories in the front page of this day. Yes, now the window story, adulterated fuel, Buhari hungry, orders query of MPDP RA head. Now, the issue of this adulterated fuel, the president, who is the Minister of Petroleum Resources, is angry, and he has ordered that a query be issued to the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. We hope we'll get to the roots of this. And this is not just an order for the headlines or for the optics. We've talked so much about this dirty fuel in a market, how over 3 million liters, 370 million liters came into the country. Somebody definitely dropped the ball, and you've been talking about this all morning. But let's look at another story in front page of this day. Nigeria drags UK's crime agency to court over 150 million pounds Abacha loot. US, UK oppose move. The inexhaustible Abacha loot scattered all over the world. Nigeria dragging UK's crime agency to court to have access to this loot. And we can do a lot with 150 million pounds. Now, the lead story, Osinbajo, Supreme Court seems to be exceeding constitutional limit in election matters. Says legal interpretation must bow to the people's wish. Cites Zamfara's case in 2019 polls, visits Hanifa's family. Yes, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, was in Kano yesterday, specifically to declare open the Conference of Law Teachers. And he made this postulation yesterday. Now, between politics, legalism, or academic exercise, you try to locate what the Vice President is saying. Using the case of Zamfara, where in 2019, of course, after the election, Supreme Court ruled, because there was a case pending in the Supreme Court before the election, where all the candidates of APC, who coincidentally won the election, were disqualified because the party primaries that gave them the party's ticket was deemed to be invalid, illegal, null, and void. Hence, the next party, which happened to be the People's Democratic Party, were declared the winners by INEC, as it were. But the way the Vice President has put it, it's as though the original case was at the Supreme Court. There were a series of cases on the Zamfara issue, primaries of the APC. One court, in some cases, courts of coordinate jurisdiction gave divergent views, whether this, the primaries were valid or not, and this went on and on, to the extent that INEC had samples, different samples of ballot papers, waiting for the final the judgment just before the election day to know the ballot paper they will use. One had APC, some had no APC. And alas, on the last day, there was a judgment that the primaries were valid. And as such, of course, APC participated. But again, that case moved to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld an earlier judgment that the primaries were invalid. Now, the Vice President is saying that the Supreme Court ought to have taken note of the fact that the people have already voted for APC candidates. I don't get it. How the Supreme Court will now resort to what happened on election day to determine a case that is before it. And in any case, it's not only Zamfara. We had that kind of scenario. Why the president chose only Zamfara, where the APC won, and not Rivers, where all APC candidates were also disqualified. Maybe because perhaps he did not refer to that because the APC candidates in Rivers did not stand a chance of winning. Of course, in a state where Nyesom Wike, the PDP governor, was the incumbent, and he was participating in that election also. But the point one is raising here, should the Supreme Court be thinking of what happened on election day to rule on a case? Because the Vice President is saying the judgment has to take into cognizance. That's my own interpretation of what he's saying. What the people have voted for on that day. Now, not because it's APC, any other party, if you cannot put your house in order, conduct proper primaries, of course you suffer the consequence. There were 18 political parties that took part in that election. So, because of one party, the Vice President is saying that the Supreme Court ought to have asked for a rerun. So other parties will now incur another cost to run election because of a rerun. Because Party A, in this case APC, did not put their acts together. But is this politics? Is it legalism or just sheer academic exercise? Because the Vice President delivered that speech at the Conference of Law Teachers. And he told them they have so much to chew on that topic. Perhaps let's just say it is academic exercise or the politician in the professor of law that is speaking. Now, if we just look at other stories, other newspapers quickly, if I come to you, the Guardian newspaper, dirty fuel, litigations loom over damaged vehicles, scarcity to end weekend. While the Punch newspaper also reporting the story, adulterated fuel, petrol. Federal government may return fuel to suppliers, 100 million liters affected, say marketers. While the Daily Trust newspaper, adulterated petrol unsettles motorists. Now, the Daily Independent newspaper has another story. Upcoming mega party revs up. Process to square.
Well, Ifene,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have this breaking news that we need to report. After that, the newspaper review will continue. Report reaching us says the divisional police officer of Jibia local government area of Katsina State has been killed by suspected bandits while trying to repel an attack in the early hours of Wednesday. A military officer was also wounded during the attack, which took place in Magama Jibia community, which is at the Nigeria-Niger Republic border axis in Katsina State. The Katsina State Police Command is yet to comment on the incident. Well, very sad story there. You know, a police officer, divisional police officer of Jibia local government area of Katsina State, killed by suspected bandits while he and his team were trying to repel an attack in the early hours of Wednesday. A military officer was also wounded during the attack, which took place in Magama Jibia community, which is at the border between Nigeria and Niger Republic in Katsina State. Well, the Katsina State Police Command is here to comment on the incident. We hope they will do so shortly. But you know, the border areas in Nigeria, quite, you know, a sad development. May the soul of the gentlemen involved rest in peace. They died in active service. And I hope that the government, you know, would help provide necessary support for their families. Back to you.
Yes, quite a sad development there, the insecurity in the country. And that is the president's home state of Katsina, where this is happening. Those, the gallant policeman trying to repel that attack by bandits and has been killed in the process. Now let's continue with your newspaper review. Daily Independent newspaper we're looking at. Now, upcoming mega party rips up process to square up to PDP APC. Set up Transition Harmonization Council. Yes, this is the party that you have former INEC chairman Mahmoud Jega driving, as it were, and you have other big names like Pat Utomi, also part of that process. But for a long time, in past elections, we've heard of the emergence of a mega party, a third force, whatever you want to use, term you want to use. But let's hope this time around, these politicians will be able to put their acts together, and other interested Nigerians who are also part of this process. We need, perhaps, it's about time, we need a third party that is big enough to challenge the PDP and the APC, but most importantly, to put forward candidates who can actually turn around the fortunes of this country. And perhaps they too should have the spread and the tap roots, the grassroots supports to win elections, just like the PDP and the APC, so that we don't have a situation where we say APC, PDP, and 16 other parties. Now, if we just look at the story below the photograph in Daily Independent newspaper, APC hails court ruling. Hails court's ruling, okaying Zamfara governor's defection. Yes, some coincidence. On a day, the governor who emerged eventually after that Supreme Court judgment, Matawale, as Zamfara governor of the PDP. Of course, he defected to APC, and that has been challenged in court, but the court has ruled that there's no problem with him defecting to another party. Now, if we just look at another newspaper quickly, sorry, just now perhaps we just go straight to the foreign newspaper. Now, the Telegraph newspaper of UK, waiting list will rise no matter what, says Javid. Sayed Javid, the health secretary. The NHS has no short-term fix for the backlog. Of course, those backlog in NHS emerged as a result of the coronavirus pandemic that took the attention of the health workers to the extent that regular patients were not able to keep their dates with their GPs, and those who had surgery appointments had to wait for a long time. And this has been a problem. And Sajid Javid, the health secretary, is saying that there's a radical plan to tackle the record backlog. But he's saying, with many people already having waited so long, the total number of people on the waiting list will continue to rise. That's what he's saying. While the New York Times, there's an opinion piece on the front page of the New York Times. Germany is elusive on Ukraine. Germany is elusive on Ukraine. Of course, after the meeting with President Joe Biden, the German Chancellor, not being definitive whether they will stop the the pipeline project that Russia is constructing through Germany to deliver gas to the rest of Europe. Ruben and Tundu, over to you.
Would you like to?
Okay, first, I want to comment on some of the stories. There's a story that is in most of the papers today. The governor of Ondo State, chairman, Southern Governors Forum, meeting with a group called the Power Rotation Movement, making it very clear to that group that the governors of the southern part of Nigeria are resolved. They are determined to ensure that whoever becomes president of Nigeria in 2023 comes from the south. And this is a position on which the Southern Governors Forum has been very consistent. And he also made it clear that any northern presidential candidate fielded by any political party will lose the election. How the Southern governors will be able to determine that is difficult to, to determine. But what is clear is that the Southern Governors Forum, speaking through its chairman, is very consistent in saying, on the basis of the principle of equity and justice and fairness and national, togetherness, that the next president of Nigeria must come from the south. I've been waiting for the Southern governors to say something in this regard, following speculations about what the two major political parties intend to do. And there you have it, Akeredolu of Ondo State saying that. Now, as for the vice president, saying that the courts should tilt more towards the will of the people.
To take into cognizance the will of the people.
rather than determining, rules, giving judgments on the basis of technicalities. Well, there's something called judicial review. And Professor Osinbajo, as a teacher of the law, speaking to teachers of the law, is in a very good position to do a review of a judgment that had been given in court. But I get your point that in this particular case, it seems to be partisan because the court, of course, will deal with the facts of the case. So the vice president was not talking about the facts of the case. He was talking about a situation whereby the people had voted overwhelmingly for the APC in Zamfara. The PDP did not win, did not get the votes, and yet the courts ruled on the basis of the principles of law. However, I think the other side of it that I thought that the vice president would have pointed out is the need also for these political parties to ensure internal democracy and respect their own rules, which was, I keep saying on this program, one of the major outcomes of the review process by the Electoral Commission after the 2019 general election. And Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, the head of that body, has been saying it consistently, that look, if you don't ensure internal democracy, then you have yourself to blame. And it's not only in Zamfara that we have had this kind of situation. The fact that he cited just the case of Zamfara, is not that. He was reviewing a particular case. He doesn't have to go, all over the field and cover the field in this particular instance, as lawyers say. But he raised, that objection. But it's the political parties that have to take their cue from whatever happened in Zamfara or in Rivers or even in Bayelsa and try to learn the appropriate lessons and put their houses in order. Now, fuel. You talked about fuel. Front page story in the papers today. We discussed that earlier on. Two major things jumping out in addition to the things we said before is that government is now saying that the importer of the adulterated fuel has been identified. Now, government officials should not just tell us the importer of the adulterated fuel, as they call it, or the fuel that does not meet Nigerian specifications has been identified. Who is that importer? Who is that trader that brought in this fuel that has caused serious agony for Nigerians and also for government, and that has made the president of Nigeria worried and angry?
Such embarrassment to the entire
Such a trader should not be allowed to go scot-free. The second thing that they are also saying is that the fuel that does not meet that does not meet specification will be returned to its origin, its source, under the direct sale, direct purchase agreement. Who is going to pay for that return? I hope it is the
importer.
The importer, the person, the group, the trader that brought it in, that will bear the cost, because that is also very important. And finally, what are the lessons we can draw from this? Because it happens all the time. The same people in the midstream and downstream authority that we talked about, they were the same people in DPR. And this is not the first time this will happen. So it happens again and again, and people get away with it. So the investigation should not stop at the level of query. We even want to know these people who are bringing petrol that looks like a palm oil. Somebody said the petrol, those who have had access to the high content, high sulfur, high methanol petrol that was brought in, they said it looks like palm oil.
It goes black.
Does it go black?
Black.
Okay, whatever color it assumes, whether the color of palm oil or the color of soot in Port Harcourt, it's not good for consumption by Nigerian road users.
I don't know how much time we have. I have some insights from a highly placed industry insider who says that part of the problem is, well, unscrupulous players exploiting loopholes in Nigerian law that do not specify the percentage of methanol, that in Europe is 2 to 3%, and here people think they can cheat us in this way. So that loophole needs to be closed, it needs to be addressed. So I'll probably get into that with our next guest. With regards to the VP's point, if you're going to raise Zamfara, it cuts both ways. What about Imo? And the fact that,
number 4 became number 1.
So you're right in that he didn't need to cover the field, so I guess we will have to do that on his behalf. It cuts both ways, for sure.
Anyway, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you very much.